Hello and welcome to this edition of Weather to Watch. Still looking at a major snowstorm from Texas all the way up to New England and a patch of pretty severe ice, parts of Texas, Mississippi, Arkansas, Louisiana, getting over into the Carolinas, northern Georgia included in that as well. It's been a setup we've been watching for at least a week. It is beginning to unfold as I record this, so let's take a look at the overview and then get down to the specifics. Hi, I'm meteorologist Ted Keller. Been watching this storm develop now for at least a week, hints of it even before that. And here is the overall visible satellite loop. I caught it late in the day, so we do have sunset going across the country here. So it transitions from the visible satellite loop to the infrared implied clouds by temperature, but it works pretty well too. And certainly the main center of attention is the storm that is developing right in the central U.S., south central U.S. here, being spurred on by a little circulation here south of Los Angeles. In fact, in the upper atmosphere at the 500 millibar level, we do have this little system here, which is beginning to open up a little bit. That means it goes from cutoff status. And if there's a little gap in the lines, to see how that starts to work. So this is basically getting ready to eject into the main flow. It's being helped by this trough right here. And we also have little troughs of low pressure moving through the Great Lakes, still kicking up lake effect snow with a huge Arctic high sitting up here. In fact, if we look at what the model thinks it looked like at 3 o'clock, and it was pretty accurate, I checked it against the real weather map. I just like to use it because it has the nice arrows on here, but the high pressure center is up over the Dakotas, very, very cold air. So the coloring on this map is temperature, and the cold front has descended all the way down to northern Louisiana now and is knocking on the door of Charlotte and has just moved through New York City. So that's the overall setup. Let's take a look at some of these temperatures, though, at 5 p.m. These are actual temperatures, not wind chills. Wind chills are next, but it is below zero in all of Iowa, practically. Dubuque, Iowa is 11 degrees below zero. The Chicagoland area, roughly about 8 degrees below zero, depending on where you sample. A little warmer in some places, but that's splitting hairs when you're below zero. Minneapolis, St. Paul area, 10 degrees below zero. I worked up in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, first broadcast years. They're at minus 14. In fact, that's where I experienced the coldest temperature ever in my lifetime on the thermometer, not a wind chill, was up in Eau Claire, Wisconsin at minus 30. I think the year was 85 probably, 84 or 85. I can't remember now, too long ago. Anyway, let's look at those wind chills, pretty substantial. Looking at wind chills minus 37 in parts of western Minnesota, but basically minus 20 to minus 30 pretty much sums it up there. Chicago about the same. In fact, Des Moines, most of Iowa about the same. Wind chills are dropping fast across parts of Missouri as well. So this weather system means business. Even that alone would be a headline. But of course, everybody wants to know about the snow and the freezing rain. So let's get to right to that. Well, I sampled this right before I recorded this just to show you that this map tomorrow is going to look a lot different. All this is lake effect snow here, and you can see the color coding on the left. You got a few red dots there indicating 18 to 24 inches of snow, again in very limited banded sort of ways coming off of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, and that is really the only snow reports as of 5 o'clock so far with this developing storm. However, let's take a look at a radar loop. I think I recorded this about 5 or so, and you're beginning to see the outbreak of precipitation now. So down here, this is Oklahoma. Oklahoma City's in the center of the screen here. For those listening or watching up in Springfield, Missouri, that's up in the upper right-hand corner here. So you're starting to see this coding means snow. And then this is freezing, this is sleet, freezing rain not showing up yet on this map. So snow beginning to break out. So I would check the observations coming up here in the next couple of hours from my weather office here and start to see if some of these reporting cities like Oklahoma City or Norman are actually reporting snow hitting the ground. But this is actually wave 1. And by the way, if you do live in the Ozarks and you're watching this, happen to catch it, I do produce a video specifically for us, and that's called Heads Up Weather for the Ozarks. I recorded that earlier this afternoon if you want to watch that. This is the situation on the advisories. Wow. And, these big major winter storms often do this. They're multi-day events, so we have winter storm warnings all the way from New Mexico to Boston. A lot of territory. Winter weather advisories are almost a courtesy mention on the edge of this because it's all pretty serious. And then we have these ice storm warnings here, and I'll zoom in on that here in just a second. But what about the snow? Well, this is a big storm, and I do record this for a national audience. So I put the National Weather Service snow forecast up for the next 72 hours. So this takes us all the way through 7 p.m. on Monday, and that we need that because this storm will be up in this neck of the woods by then. So closer to home, this moved around a little bit. Now earlier, the Weather Service didn't have Springfield in a 12-inch band, and it's really close. So every time a new model run comes out, it's adjusted a little bit. I still believe that the first round tonight is going to underperform, specifically in Springfield. And probably lay down what it's supposed to in Northwest Arkansas, and then the second round Saturday night will more focus on Northwest Arkansas, and that's why I think they're going to go well over a foot. I think it's a little more questionable going north of the border there, but we'll see how that pans out. Now let's take a look at the ice storm warnings, zoom in on those a little bit. Technically, Memphis is not included in this, although they may have some ice accumulation. I'll show you that in a minute. But this swath is really meant mostly for later on tonight and tomorrow. And then this is actually just kind of cold air that gets dammed in here, and some higher elevations of the Appalachians too, because this is a kind of a warm pocket that's developing here. So it's an interesting little scenario. And we can take a look at ice accumulation in a couple different ways. If you're connecting through Dallas-Fort Worth tonight and early tomorrow, there's going to be some delays for sure. That airport be located right there. So if you're looking at the ice accumulation here through noon tomorrow, it's generally somewhere between 1/10 to 2/10 of an inch, maybe as much as a 1/4 inch of ice accumulation, which isn't enough to cause travel hazards for sure if you're driving. Especially airports might be prepared enough for that, but if it gets a little bit more out of hand, it's going to be a real problem. And of course, driving would be a mess down there in North Texas and West Texas, especially parts of southern Arkansas. And then if I take a look at the NAM ice accumulation, now last one was the Weather Service forecast. This is a model, so it's putting heavier accumulations there, again, just off to the east of Memphis. So if I was in Memphis, I'd be watching this very carefully. But we're seeing 1-inch ice accumulations here, and that's bad. I mean, that's anything above 1/2 inch or so really starts to affect power lines and trees snapping, and the trees snapping affecting the power lines and all that. And you can kind of see how there's a little bit of a warmer wedge here and some colder air lingering or in the Appalachians that's going to cause that to be an ice accumulation event. So what about the timing of this as it marches across the U.S.? Well, this is what the NAM, the shorter range model, thinks things will look like tomorrow morning, Saturday morning at 6 a.m. The snow will have started in southwest Missouri, by the way, after midnight, probably after 2, most likely. But we'll be going tomorrow morning for sure. So if it were a school day, we'd be looking at some things here. But you can see the snow shield goes from Iowa all the way to central Arkansas. The purple again is sleet. Now sleet is really, it's frozen precipitation in the sense that it was frozen originally in the cloud, and it's a pellet of snow, really, kind of. You can think of it that way. It's formed a little bit differently. And you can tell sleet because it pings off your windshield if you're ever driving in sleet. And anyway, it accumulates. It's tighter, so it's little balls of ice, really, kind of like little snowballs. And so when it falls, it really packs on the ground, so it doesn't accumulate quite as much. But I can tell you that where the intersection between the snow and the sleet is right here, that's usually where the heaviest snow on the blue side of this actually ends up falling. That's why Northwest Arkansas is really targeted. Also, if you look really closely, there are some bands in the snow here, and those can often make a big difference too. Like 1 or 2 counties can see 3, 4 more inches of snow just because they get caught under one of those radar bands that intensifies it right there. So we make broad brush forecasts, but oftentimes your mileage will vary just from county to county. That's always true of any snowstorm. Now, by Saturday 6 p.m., this first wave is kind of winding down. Still some snow flurries across all of Missouri, but here's a second wave right here. And here's the freezing rain, by the way, that orange color. So that's what's got the ice storm warning out for those areas. And then Sunday at 6 a.m., overnight between that time and now is when this heavy snow, again, remember, look just off to the edge of the purple, That's where you're going to see the heaviest snow. So it kind of targets northwest Arkansas into southeast Missouri. Still snowing pretty good across this area here, and the snow spreading across Pennsylvania, quickly approaching New York. And then by Sunday at 6 p.m., full shield of snow in New England, except for maybe northern Maine. Some sleet mixed in there, maybe a little bit of freezing rain out ahead of that. It's going to be a mixed bag in parts of Virginia for sure. And so this is the development of the storm. And of course, another Arctic high pressure system is moving in. I'll show you the temperatures here in a minute. But first, let me set up the pattern change. So as I usually do, I wait for the EPS weeklies to come out twice every week, and it did yesterday, last night. So this is showing you the 500 millibar on average for the 7-day period starting this Monday. So it basically outlines the basic average pattern for next week. So we are returning to ridging in the west, and the trough that is providing all the cold and snow is still very much dislodged early in the period, especially through the east. And look at the temperature departures caused by this Arctic air here. So this is off the scale. So this color, they stop filling in colors here because it stops at 20 degrees below normal on average. So this is really, really cold air from Oklahoma to Virginia. And if that looks similar, it looks very much like the snowfall map, doesn't it? Well, there's a correlation for sure, especially for nighttime lows. And it's just that, you lay down a snow track like that, it's going to affect the temperature. Let's take a look at those temperatures. Here's the National Weather Service high temperatures. The numbers at the cities are the actual highs for Saturday, and the blues are how much below normal we are. And you can just see the departure here. So that purple area out there through West Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas, basically represents about 26 degrees below normal for the high temperature for Saturday. If we skip ahead to Monday, it moderates somewhat, but still a large swath of the country here well below the normals. High in Springfield here only 21 degrees after being below zero probably on Sunday morning. And then we go ahead to Wednesday, middle of the week. Remember that ridge that was on average showing up out west? So it begins to moderate a little bit out west, and the eastern two-thirds of the country trying to pull itself out of the deep freeze. But there's going to be another reinforcing shot of cold air. Let me show you on this 6 to 10 day outlook, Thursday through Monday of next week. Very, very much below normal. High percentage chance that there's a high confidence level, in other words. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, this is 90% probability that the forecasters are confident, 90% confidence level that this area is going to be below normal through that entire period while the west begins to warm up. And in fact, if we extend the range even more to the end of the month, 31st through the 1st, a high risk, that's that color right there, of below normal temperatures in all this dark blue area right here through that time period, getting us into the early days of February. Florida is going to feel the chill throughout the state, but especially in the northern part of the state. And anything beyond this is, it loses its accuracy too much. But hopefully this blow of cold air and the snow that preceded it will be the last we have to deal with for a while. But we'll wait as the weeks unfold and see what happens. Thanks for watching this edition of Weather to Watch. It comes out every other day, or as the weather necessitates. Please remember to share this with your friends, subscribe to the channel, or at the very least, like what you just watched. Thanks.